In this module, we're going to be talking about feedback management systems. To set the stage for what these systems are and why they're so important, let's dive into the story of Facebook and one of its major decisions for its messaging product, Messenger. In 2014, Facebook made a seemingly strange but ultimately correct product decision. They decided to fully separate out their messaging feature into a separate app called Facebook Messenger. There was no obvious reason for Facebook to separate out Messenger. In fact, there seemed to be obvious reasons for Facebook to not do so. For example, users would be required to download a completely separate Messenger app in order to chat with each other. This would create a lot of friction for users who had grown accustomed to doing their messaging natively in the Facebook app. Additionally, pulling Messenger out was a complex and burdensome execution effort, requiring dedicated, focused resources. So how did the Facebook team get the conviction to make such a drastic product change? The answer is they had strong product intuition that they needed to. Product intuition is the instinct you develop as a PM to make great product decisions, even if you don't have a full set of information to guide you. In Facebook's case, they had steadily been observing that Facebook messaging was facing stiff competition from competing products, showing up in a suboptimal user growth rate. Additionally, they also noticed user expectations had been shifting to expect a more robust messaging experience within the app. If they didn't separate out Messenger, they were at risk of being disrupted by the ongoing unbundling trend in the market. As time has shown, they made the correct choice. Separating Messenger into its own app ultimately allowed Facebook to reach a much larger audience base. In the 3 years after the initial decision, Facebook Messenger's monthly active users grew 6.5 times, from 200 million to 1.5 billion. A lot of net new users seemed to not care about Facebook's social networking features and primarily just needed a way to communicate. Great PMs use their product intuition to help them make great product decisions in the absence of detailed information. They can identify what will work for their end users without needing to do a whole battery of research studies, thus effectively creating a type of leverage for themselves. Most people think product intuition is an innate skill. However, in reality, product intuition is a developed skill. Sachin Reiki says, you develop product intuition by constantly exposing yourself to what customers are saying. Over the course of thousands of data points, you start to instinctively understand what will work and what won't. In other words, you develop product intuition by constantly immersing yourself in reading customer feedback, pattern matching across all those data points, and synthesizing those patterns into insights. We call this process of using feedback to develop product intuition feedback immersion. Feedback immersion refers to the act of submerging yourself in user context with feedback and then synthesizing insights from it. Similar to how you immerse yourself in a foreign culture to better learn the language, immersing yourself in user feedback enables you to better understand what will resonate with the user. Feedback can be explicit customer feedback, where users say directly what they want. For example, in NPS Verbatim, users may explicitly ask for product changes like new features, improvements to buggy experiences, or other important changes. Implicit customer feedback, where you infer user wants and needs from their actions. For example, help search queries give you implicit clues on what users find unintuitive about your product. In Facebook's case, they had several data points of customer feedback. Explicit feedback included requests for pure messaging versus social networking features, user requests for Facebook to match the better experiences of other messaging apps. An example of implicit feedback was observing users being slow to view messages due to extra clicks to access them. Through regular exposure to these user requests and behaviors, they built up the intuition that they needed to make a drastic change with Messenger. However, there are 3 major challenges PMs face when they try to proactively develop product intuition: friction in establishing a regular feedback immersion habit, challenges in maintaining a direct understanding of the user, and overweighing the importance of recent feedback in decision-making. The first challenge PMs face is friction. This happens for two reasons. pull relationship with feedback. Most PMs have a pull-type relationship with their feedback, meaning they have to remember to check for feedback and intentionally pull it from a system. As a result, most PMs end up looking at their feedback sources fairly irregularly. The next challenge is friction in accessing feedback. Then, after they've decided to go look at feedback, they have to manually go into the system that holds the feedback data and create a query for it, doing this for each source of feedback they want to look at. If NPS data lives in a software like Woodtrix, for example, you have to get access from the marketing team. If churn survey data lives in Google Sheets, you have to figure out where it's stored on the drive and then format it into a readable document. As a result of these points of friction, the PM ends up looking at feedback on an infrequent basis and looking at a non-holistic set of data sources when they do look at feedback, both of which ultimately hinder their ability to build product intuition. The second challenge most PMs face is difficulty in maintaining a direct understanding of the user. Sachin Reiki says, "As an organization gets bigger, I always find it takes far more effort to actually talk to your customers." In other words, as organizations scale, a common problem PMs run into is they have increasingly less direct, first-hand exposure to the voice of their users because it feels like they have to talk to so many more people. Instead, they start to rely on second-hand exposure to understand their users. For example, instead of talking directly to their users, they might rely on reading user research reports done by a user research team. The problem with second-hand research is that you start to lose the original voice of customer. This results in a less nuanced understanding of who your users are and what they actually want. The second-hand study might say, users indicated auto-scrolling is a high priority, citing competitor parity. Contrast it to how a user might describe it. The true user commentary might be, every other reading software out there has auto-scroll. This is a basic need for making reading more seamless. I'm quitting your product until you build it in. The second-hand study direct is far weaker than the direct VOC in conveying the user's context, their wants, and the intensity of their need. The third challenge most PMs face is that they tend to over-index recent feedback. Instead of having an objective view on what's most requested, PMs tend to overweigh the most recent feedback in their decision-making. This tendency to overweigh recent feedback is known as recency bias. The problem is that this results in incorrect product intuition for what users actually want, leading to suboptimal product outcomes. For example, consider a hypothetical case at Bumble. Bumble is a social dating app where people can upload photos of themselves and be matched to other users based on their mutual interest. Let's say Bumble had several requests for major matching algorithm improvements, all of which would significantly improve the user experience. Then, let's assume one of its competitors, Tinder, launched video profile pictures, where users can upload short videos of themselves instead of static photos. Bumble might suddenly be inundated with feature requests to support video profile pictures as well. Without a system, it would be easy for Bumble to prioritize video for profile photos over matchmaking improvements. Video for profile photos might be the most recently requested product change, but a matchmaking algorithm improvement is the most requested overall. The problem with doing so in this hypothetical scenario is that the percentage of users that care about video profiles seems large in perception, but is actually much smaller. As a result, prioritizing video profiles would make the small percentage of the user base on the cutting edge of profile optimization happy, but not move the needle at all for the huge remaining audience of the Bumble population. Clearly, PMs face some major challenges in being able to effectively develop their product intuition. So, how do great PMs overcome these challenges and develop their product intuition then? The secret is that great PMs use feedback management systems. Feedback management systems automate the collection and processing of feedback from multiple sources. They centralize all feedback in a single system, removing the friction that usually blocks PMs from regularly looking at multiple sources of feedback. Additionally, the systems preserve the original voice of the customer so that PMs can keep getting a direct understanding of their user at scale. They also quantitatively track total requests for features, allowing PMs to sense whether they are falling victim to recency bias. For PMs who have a broader scope than just specific feature work, these systems also extend to tracking broader product requests. For example, a PM at Wise might want to track requests for new markets to serve. Or similarly, a PM at Reforge might want to track requests for new programs. These aren't necessarily feature requests, but can be tracked all the same in the feedback management systems we talk about. In this module, and for simplicity in language, we'll talk about tracking feature requests. Know that these systems can also extend to broader product change request tracking. When used together, feedback management systems allow great PMs to better develop their product intuition, creating leverage for them. In other words, they are able to make better product decisions with less dedicated research. In this module, we'll talk about the feedback management systems great PMs use to develop and maintain product intuition. We'll introduce two critical feedback systems, the feedback river and the feedback system of record. In lessons 1 and 2, we'll cover feedback rivers. A feedback river is a system that consolidates and integrates your multiple feedback sources into a single channel. The feedback river provides you with a regularly updating stream of user data points from multiple feedback sources with which to hone your product intuition. In Lesson 1, we'll explain what exactly feedback rivers are and how they build your product intuition. Then, in Lesson 2, we'll walk through how to set yours up. In Lesson 3, we'll cover feedback systems of record. A feedback system of record is a system that quantitatively tracks how many users have requested a feature over time. The feedback system of record helps prevent you from falling victim to recency bias and helps you track what users most want, enabling you to better calibrate your product intuition. We'll explain what exactly feedback systems of record are and how to set yours up. And finally, in Lesson 4, we'll show you how to use these systems in tandem to develop your product intuition. Let's jump in.